Lesson 4 focuses on finding all the different representations, so your table, graph, rule, and tile pattern, given bits and pieces. So for this first one, I'm given my points on my line, and I need to find a table, I need to find the rule. So first thing I can do is I don't have to make a table to find the rule. From our last lesson, we know that I can pick 2 points and I can draw my growth triangle. So my growth triangle, I went over 1 and I went up 2. And remember that this bar right here can be my fraction bar. So my rule would be 2x, because we know that 2 over 1 equals 2. And then I look and see, where did I start? Well, my first point is when x is 1, so then I would write plus 1. Now I can make my table to make sure I'm correct. So 0 is at 1, 1 is at 3, and 2 is at 5, and 3 is at 7. Well, looking at my table, I'm increasing by 2 every time, so therefore my 2x is correct. And then when 0 is at 1, I'm adding 1, so that's also correct. If I were to draw a tile pattern, figure 0 would have 1 tile, and every figure from then on would increase by 2 tiles each time. This one's a little different. If you notice, I have 2 points on my graph, but neither of the points are when I have figure 0. So I don't know how much I'm starting with for figure 0. So I'm going to do what I can do, and that is draw my growth triangle. And notice my growth triangle is a lot larger this time, but that's okay. So I went from 2 all the way over to 8, and I'm counting by ones. So I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to label that with a 6. And then I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm also going to label that with a 6. So my slope, or my growth triangle, is 6 over 6, which equals 1. So that means in my rule, I have y equals 1x plus blank. So now I have to figure out, how am I going to know what I start with? Well, I know figure 2 has 4, and figure 8 has 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of those 2 points to solve for my b, because I know figure 2, which is my x value, gives me a y value of 4. So what I can do is I can plug in 4 for my y, and I'm going to plug in 2 for my x to figure out my b. So 4 equals 1 times 2 is 2 plus b. So 2 plus what gets me 4? 2, which means b has to equal 2. So my equation is going to be y equals 1x plus 2. I can double check by plugging in my other point of 8, 10. So I could do 1 times 8, which is 8, plus 2 gives me my 10, which is my y value, just to double check to make sure my equation is correct. Now this one's different because I'm given my figure 7 and I'm given a table. Well, figure 7 has 3 and figure 4 has 9. So one thing I could do is graph the 2 points, or another thing I could do would be to extend my table. And figure 7 has 3. So then I have to figure out, what can I do evenly to get from 3 to 9, and I I have to fill in 2 in the blank. Well, the first thing I notice is that from 9 to 3, I'm going down. Okay, so I'm decreasing. And I can see that between the two of them, it's 6. So the difference between 9 to 3 is going to be 6. And from 4 to 7 is going to be 3. So from 9 to 3, the difference is 6. And from 4 to 7, the difference is 3. So if I divide those two evenly, because I always do my y over my x, remember, 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. And again, I can look and see from 9 to 3, I'm going down, so it's really going to be a negative 2. So this would give me 7, and that would give me 5, which would then end me at 3. But now, I'll have to go the opposite way to get the ones above it. And the reason I have to do that is because my rule has to be going down. So I'm losing tile pattern or figure numbers or, little tiles between each of them. So I'm working backwards. So my rule here would be y equals negative 2x plus 17. And again, I could plug in my one I know, like 4, 9, to make sure it works. So negative 2 times 4 is a negative 8. Negative 8 plus 17 gives me my 9, which then means my rule is correct.